Okay, let me first get in tune with you. I'm a boat and person, so I need to do this, and I love music. So I'll go. Okay. Estas son las mañanitas que empezamos, mira qué gente bonita que se ha reunido aquí. Okay, so global community. That is definitely a value I hold close to my heart. And some of you that know me a little bit more, I like to tweak words. So for me, global has embedded local and global. And I think that is one of the powerful aspects we have as a community. And I think our keynotes are really exemplifying that. And I'm really excited to be introducing the first one to you. So Tonia Gray is coming all the way from Australia, and she's going to be our first keynote. And she exemplifies this both and quality that we have, because as many of us, our experiential practice has many phases, right? Tonia is a researcher, a practitioner, and a curriculum developer. And she has, with her interdisciplinary research, she explores human-nature relationships and their impact on well-being and human development. How exciting that is, right? So she's going to dive us into outdoor education and adventure therapy in OC research, practice, and insights. So please let's welcome Tonia Gray. Bienvenida.
Great. Thank you for the introduction, Jerry. And it's just wonderful to be here after I've flown about, 36 hours or so to be on this stage. Look, where I'll start, I've got about 80 slides, so can you put your seatbelt on and strap yourself in, because we're going to take off pretty fast once this PowerPoint comes up on the screen. Okay. Sorry? Are we there? Great. First of all, I'd love to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land. And that's something we do in Australia. And I checked with Connie Russell from Thunder Bay, Lakehead. And apparently, I can't even pronounce it, Kaninki Kawa are the traditional owners, and this is the local meeting space. So while we were having our meetings about what we're going to talk about over the next 6 months with Dan, he wanted us to build a bigger boat, because in some ways we can be myopic and just look at the North America-centric model. So what's going on in Australia and India, and even though Canada's still North America, we'll call it another country. So thanks, Dan, for foreshadowing where we're going. I really want to pick up on that hashtag of expanding our global capacity. And I'll also have some provocations for you. My three main themes link into the values of AEE. So reflective practice and what has been the impact of your work. And the salient memories for me over 35 years in outdoor experiential education, what's worked. We're lifelong learners because we're lifelong mistake makers, and I make tons of mistakes. The gender asymmetry is where I'll spend most of today's talk, probably the 10 minutes that I've been given for that, and the emergence of a collaborative voice. And lastly, the Australian curriculum has moved to a national curriculum, and we had a real win where outdoor learning per se is now integrated as a cross-curriculum priority. Okay, so that was a fantastic win. So that's where we're heading, that's the menu. Let's look back before we can look forward. And as experiential educators, that's something we do very well, reflective practice. This landscape here is harsh and hostile, yet we have a purple flower coming to fruition. And in many ways that represents me, because what's gotten me to where I am today, and this is what Dan wants us to talk about, is passion, grit, and resilience. And I know you have this in bucket loads as a group. But there's one extra ingredient that we don't talk about very much, and that is hope. circling up with people who have a shared vision, and collectively you create pods of hope. I've got, if you don't know what this is, that's what the picture is. Does anyone know what it is? It's a lotus. But the significance of this metaphor is it grows out of mud. It needs the murkiness to survive. But the second metaphor is it needs a group and a community to thrive. And that lotus will be the metaphor for my talk today. So reflection and impact. If you work in a university I always say impact is king. You've got to make impact, otherwise your work means nothing. But to me, you have to be a practitioner and a researcher to really make impact where the rubber hits the road. My first entree into AEE was at Austin, Texas, way back in 1994 when I was doing my Ph.D. And what I really needed to look at was, okay, it's a critical resource in its own right, experiential education, but it seemed like there was this paucity of empirical data to define and absolutely concretise what we're doing in the field. So my PhD was all along those lines, and I probably haven't moved far since. But I realise that nearly 50% of you are new-timers, and you wouldn't even know who this Aussie is here on the stage. So I'm about to show you where I started in 83, 84, 85. It's a 2-minute video, but I'm just going to show you 27 seconds, and that's the cue for the guy up the back to push play.
During my 20s, I was the first woman in Australia to teach wilderness studies, immersing adolescent students into nature-based curriculum. In my 30s, I carved out an academic career, bringing pre-service teachers into contact with nature as a potent teaching and learning tool. In my mid-50s, the invisibility of women in outdoor and environmental education is my primary focus of study. I'm a multi-award-winning educator.
I don't need to say that.
Thanks.
So that's where I'm heading. I've done years and years and years of this, but as I said, I'm a big mistake maker. But I was particularly interested, and I want to thank Bob Henderson. Is he here in the audience? Oh, there he is, the gorgeous Bob. He inspired me to write this piece for Pathways because I looked back at those kids you just saw in 1984, 85, 86, and I could contact them through Facebook, which I'll get to in a moment. But I wanted to know what's the residual and salient message of going through a program such as wilderness studies. So if you want to read more about it, and I talked to Tobin last night that she's read this and she really liked it. But look, here's that group, so you know I'm just not bunging it on. This group are now 46, 47 years of age. So they've travelled the world, they've been married, divorced, they've moved house, they're just your typical 46, 47-year-olds. What I want to point out here now, and it probably doesn't mean anything to you, but I introduced journaling in the 80s. It wasn't a known thing in Australia, and in fact, I used to get ribbed by the men who taught with me as a wacky practitioner by getting the students to sit and pen and be quiet and reflect on the day's activities. We were also part of pioneers because Australia hadn't seen a program like this. The students were our guinea pigs. And in many ways, when I look back, and Claire Dallett will kill me, look back at the risk management practices that we did in those days, they were abysmal. But you know what? We never even had an accident. So that says a lot about our nanny state and hypervigilant behaviours. The program itself ran over year 9 and year 10, which is the equivalent in America or Canada of 15 and 16-year-olds who spent, just like you would for French or commerce or geography, that time was spent in wilderness with me in class, I won't bang that again, and we had camps which we built up to. So the theory and the practical. The point I really need to make here is it's no different today as what we would have done 30 years ago, and I think you'd produce most of the same curriculum in your schools today. expeditioning, the theory of the human impact on the natural world, and so on. So I do think we were progressive way back in the 80s. So through our beautiful social media, I was able to contact these kids. And as a researcher, I love least pain for most gain. And it was so easy to contact them through Facebook Messenger. And all I did was get ethics, of course, you have to do that in Australia, and ask them through a link, they just had to click on it, a whole series of questions. I am more than willing to share that inventory that I set up. I know Bob Henderson wants to do it with his students that have been through, you know, his Canadian system for a long, long time. So anyone else who wants to build that global boat, just see me after this, and it's all about, you know, impact is king. But what they remember, I asked them 3 words. What do you remember? And the size of the font goes to the amount of times it was mentioned. But this is the clinger, or the catch maker for me, in that they did not remember anything I did in the theory of the classroom. Either I was a bad teacher, or it said something more. And that is, if you don't involve the emotions and the affective domain, there's no learning to be had. And yet that worries me in our digital age, even in kindergarten where we see kids on screens. Where's the emotion? So, heart, touching the heart space is absolutely central. And I know our modern curriculum has the 3 R's, reading, writing and arithmetic, but in my mind it's just really rote learning, regurgitating and then putting in the rubbish bin, because relationships, resilience and reflection are really what defines us, is it not? So what they remember, gosh, they remember hypothermia. They remember the rain, the floods that we are traversing rivers in floods, etc. They remember the persistence and tenacity that was involved. They recall, the friendships, the communication, the fun, the support. They also recall authentic learning experiences and embodied learning. So yet again, a strikeout for the digital age, because I don't think that really can embrace those qualities. So, right, as I said earlier, the quiet time. This was my risk-taking. It was only because I was a health practitioner. By the way, I did my master's in Colorado at the University of Northern Colorado. So, yeah, health is a big part of my background. So as you can see, the boys were the hardest to win over. The girls would do journaling quite easily. But eventually, you know, we had a routine around the campfire at night or whatever. It was solo time. But, as I said, I was ridiculed by the males. Out of the 25 kids I taught, 30 years later, 50% of them still had that logbook in their possession. That blew me away. And I know the next question to me is, do you still have your logbook, Tonia? No, I don't, sorry. So, big fail for me, but I couldn't believe the impact that journal had on them. And they know exactly where it is, in what drawer to go to, just like their passport, to grab it and reread it. So, you know, I've also incorporated this into the tertiary system, and I actually always go away from digital reflection. I love the handwritten word, and there is a reason for that, and that comes up here. There's a guy called Ioannis Palasma who wrote a book called The Thinking Hand. And in that thinking hand, that's what the book looks like. He believes that if it goes from here to hand to paper, it concretizes or makes indelible the learning. And I believe that, because if I write a shopping list and I need milk and coffee and whatever else, I can forget that when I walk out the door, but I reckon I'd remember 95% of it. Versus if you just made this mental note, it's nowhere near as the recall capacity isn't there. So my question to you, the provocation as well, is how much of us have got written work or journaling in this modern day era against the digital world? My other provocation on the global capacity is culturally and linguistically diverse. As I look around this room, the majority of us are white, middle-aged humans. I'm lucky that the university I now teach at has a huge population of refugees from Syria. So part of my learning, my blind spot, I thought when I started to have these girls in my class with burqas and hijabs that, oh gosh, what can I do in outdoor ed with them? But the very first day I have my classes, they always have to go out into the university grounds and find something that represents them. I had no idea, but Lena, whose picture is on the left-hand side, she went out and made a palm tree because that palm tree represented her name. And this was on Instagram, and I just stumbled across it, probably while I was stalking her, if you really want to know. But she'd written things like, "This class is amazing." And so I knew that from a global perspective, bringing many, many cultures into this outdoor arena has a lot of benefits and advantages for us. Is there anyone who hands up that's using, experiential education to connect children or students to practices outdoors? Yeah, there's a challenge for us because I've got to say we're a minority here. And the other part, I know Phil does at his school, sense of place, huge. Always through the Indigenous knowledges, in Australia we are connected to land. We don't own the land owns us. So probably now there's a through line that you're starting to see in my work. It's what glasses do you want to put on? Are you going to look through obstacles or is it as an opportunity? And what I now see when I reflect on my work is slow pedagogies, print your photos. I'm lucky, all those photos I still had from 30 years ago, and they're wonderful anchors for memory when you show the kids again of what they've gone through. Involve the emotions. Risk-taking is central, not peripheral, but in our nanny state, this hyper-vigilant world that we are in, I actually think we're watering down and diluting the experiences for kids. And get out of the way and let nature be the teacher because she is the most powerful force that you can contemplate. Now I'm getting into the controversial bit and I hope you don't zone out here because really it's everyone in this room. Turning the researcher microscope on ourselves as a profession. I'm going to be a truth teller here and say the unsayable, and it takes a lot of guts, but it doesn't matter. I've been known to have guts in multitude. There is a gender asymmetry in the field and pockets of bias, and our academic footprint of women is nowhere near that of men. And the funny thing is it's hard to pinpoint. I can't put my finger on it. It's covert, and it's when we start to look at that covert nature that we'll see a trend. And men, and I shouldn't even have to say this, I'm not man bashing, I love men, right? But I don't think it's orchestrated or intentional on your behalf, it's a blind spot, and let me point it out for you. So my journey of clarity started in, it's like this. It's a windscreen in my car and I needed to take the wiper and just I see what's going on. And yeah, something was amiss in the profession. I always thought feminism was a pipeline issue. We had Gloria Steinem, we had Germaine Greer in Australia. They all fought for women's rights. And I just thought, as time evolves, we'll get there, we'll have equality. But, and that it would self-correct. I was inspired by a beautiful presentation I went to in North Carolina at AEE in 1997, where Karen Warren's book came out, and I think Denise Mitten was in the room, and perhaps Nina Roberts, and a whole lot. And I just thought, wow, these women have got it. So obviously I had to buy the book, and I took it back, and it's my Bible, and it's so well, it's here with me. It's travelled back to America, or North America. But here's the blind spot I needed to point out. 2013, I was at the International Outdoor Education Research Conference in Dunedin. And the topic I went to watch was called Transformative and Critical Theories in Outdoor Research. Okay, got the topic? It was a defining moment for me. I'll use an outdoor photo, but it really did happen indoors. So we were all sitting in a circle, and there was 3 men delivering the workshop. And they sat in 3 chairs just like this, and then the rest of us were in a circle. And they started it off, you know, critical and transformative theories in outdoor education. And if you wanted to say something, you had to tap them on the shoulder and take their spot. Okay, got the picture? Pretty easy. 40 minutes passed. Not one woman got up, not one woman theorist was named, and I was left stupefied. It was like males exalting males, and it's a male's world. So, I led to reflect on why on earth did I stay mute? Why didn't I get up and say something? I'm part of the problem if I don't have a solution. That some of the reasons are here. My main one that jumps out at me is a feminazi, that if I get up and jump and say what I do, they think, oh, she's an angry bitch, you know, or whatever. And it's not like that at all. And if you want to read more, that's in the Australian Journal of Outdoor Ed. We've now changed names. So, yeah, if we exert this powerful masculine energy, we're called dykes and ballbusters, and that's not the way we want to be perceived. So the gender divide, let me just recap how different the worlds are. Can you do an activity for me? Place your hands on your head. I invite you to do this. As I say a name, and if you don't know who it is, just put your hands down on your lap. Last man or woman standing may have to do an activity, so be truthful. First name, Marina Ewald. Thanks, probably 66% of the audience went down. Susan Webb. More are going down. Rachel Cuss. And oh, they can't go back up. Once you're down, you're down. Phyllis Ford. Oh, we've still got, wow, we've only got a few, 4 I think I can see. Becky Mason. That should be Ellen Henriette Swallow Richards, but in the transition to get here, it's changed. And I see 1, 2, 3, let's see. Thistle Yolette Harris. We've got no one in the room. Oh, sorry, Denise. Of course, Denise reads my stuff. We write together. Your name? Mackenzie. That is fantastic. You need, I'll try and get you a little koala or something special to take away with you. But Thistle Yolette Harris is the nature-based educator from Australia, which even Australians won't even know that she existed. So the point of this, and this is the paper we've just published, Denise and TA and Sandy and Catherine and I, is that we don't know many females. And yet, and if you want that paper, it's just on academia. This slide is courtesy of Denise. Marina Ewald was Kurt Hahn's right-hand woman. And it gets even worse. Kurt Hahn never ever went on an expedition. He suffered from sunstroke. And if Kurt Hahn was a woman, would he be as exalted as what Marina was, because, we'd say to us that was probably, I don't know, a ring in, and really you don't understand if you haven't done it what you're preaching about. So without that, we've got to now turn moments into momentum. As I said, that was 2013. Pods of Hope. We got a lot of women together and we transformed together. And we put a book together. I'm going to backtrack. We went to Wiki as our font of all knowledge and looked at significant people in outdoor education. 17 people were listed. All of them were males. And when I look around the room at, Karen and Denise and Deb Jordan, and why aren't their names there? So, that's it, so you can see I'm not having you on. And that's the word that I've just expanded it so you can see the 17 males that were named. Bear Grylls, by the way, made it. So the point I'm making is, women have been erased from this landscape. And the Bechdel test is something the Hollywood movies put on themselves. I reckon the industry needs a Bechdel test on itself. So, we presented this, Denise and I, and TA at Nova Scotia, Canada last year, and we had a male put his hand up and say, but girls or women, you can edit Wikipedia. And we go, yeah, we know, and we've tried. And the gatekeeper, because Denise did this in one of her postgraduate courses, the gatekeeper of Wiki wouldn't let women in. So, my point to make to you is it's only if we do this collaborative. And it shouldn't be women who have to fix the problem. I wish I had the presence of mind to say to that guy that put his hand up, and why is it women's job to fix this problem? It's an inclusive problem. So, my question now, the provocation, if AEE loves inclusivity, are we really based on meritocracy? I know some fantastic women sitting in this room who are overlooked. So yes, here's the bringing it together. There's a male-dominated narrative. So the intent of the book was a starting point. And this is what the book looks like. It'll come out early 2018, and it's marketed, thank goodness, by Palgrave as their Gender and Education Book of the Year. So it's got 6 sections. I really love the motherhood part because we see a lot of women struggle in the field and combining experiential education with motherhood, the leadership and the transformations, case studies of women in action, and then we have a plan for how we're going to do this together as a collaborative voice. So 62 chapters, it's huge. It's like, it'll be your weight training for the day if you want to have one in both hands. And 80 women writers or plus from around the globe. So back to my spectacles. Are we going to look at this as an opportunity or an obstacle? Women, this is one thing that Denise and I noticed were really hard to sustain and maintain on track. And this actually was an eye-opener for me. I approached, in Australia, the first woman to climb Everest, and I said, I'd love you to write a chapter. She turned to me and said, I've got nothing to say. And I still haven't been able to cajole her into writing for the book. So, not me, go talk to XYZ, they're better than me. That was a common thing that came up. My friends and family need me. My sister's going through a divorce. I need to be her support mechanism, da-da-da-da. So these were some of the common recurring themes, and a lot of self-doubt and poor self-image. And that probably contributes to our problems. So what I'm saying is these are the etiological factors why we probably don't have a presence. So I know Anita and Christine Norton and Karen and whatever, they write widely on this, especially mentoring. But as women, I've got to say, don't try and be men. That's not going to win. We've got to celebrate our differences. That's one of the lessons I've learnt. And we've got an influx of talented young women coming through the pipeline. We need to support and nurture and absolutely maintain them in the system. Because what I see is women who've got a prodigious drive. We saw the secretary have been 2 women because we can rely on them to do the work. You know, you said that Anita was super organised and whatever. They've got this prodigious drive and talent, but they don't translate to highly visible senior positions. Right. I'm going to just now go. Is Katie Wall in the room? Katie, I've had lots of emails. There, give her a clap. This is a fabulous little thing that she's done. Look, I don't want to carbon date you, like I just carbon dated. I'd say you're in your 30s. I had no idea. Perfect, she's in her 30s, and that's an important point to make. She wrote to me after she read my F word in outdoor education, and she said, oh my God, I just read this while I was in the field, and I needed to read it because on that page, it's every available white space is starred and asterisked and underlined. So the girls, women in their 30s have got the same message that I've got in our 50s and 60s and 70s. So there is a commonality, and that's sad. So thank you for your note, Katie. It's been inspiring. So men need to play an active role, and that is, John Key, for example, has said that this book is going to be the waymark towards the profession reaching maturity in and of itself. Okay, and it's opened his eyes to what's really going on. And in fact, the last AEE has had 3 consecutive editions with women theories and writers within it, which is fantastic. Tom Potter, I've got to pick up on him. I'm heading to see him after this conference. He has his daughter, Stephanie, and his wife, Teresa, in the book writing. So he sort of came through the process, the journey with us. And as he started to read what was going on, he then said, I now understand what this new narrative is all about. So he took it to his staff on their retreat and said, I'd love gender inclusive course content to be written into every class that we teach. And it actually won. But then he had an aha moment. And it went like this. He wrote it into his outdoor ed class, and the week that it was gender, on week 12 or whatever it happened to be, a male student emailed him and said, Professor Potter, I'm not coming this week because the topic is not of interest to me. And Tom just turned to me and said, I get it now, Tonia. I know what you're up against. Okay? So, there's a systemic bias, a dominant ideology, and structural and cultural discrimination against us. Just really quickly, I've now, these pods of hope that I was talking about, I've just joined one of 75 STEM. STEM is science, technology, engineering, maths and medicine, and we'll be going to Antarctica at the beginning of 2019, trying as a collective voice of women worldwide to do something about global warming and climate change. And hopefully we can convince Trump and even our Prime Minister Turnbull that there is a problem. And the Tertiary Education Outdoor Network in Australia also is a collective voice, and I'd love to see whether America has something similar where you come together in pods of hope. I don't know if I'm going to have much more time to talk about, I was going to get into children and nature and the curriculum. I'm presenting this with Andrew Babilia and the group on Saturday afternoon, if you want to know more. But look, here's the startling picture. Around the world, modern kids spend 40 minutes outside, and that's probably an overstatement, a week that is, and 52 hours in front of a screen. And that could be, your iPads, your computer games, and whatever else. And it is a bit like, Aldous Huxley in A Brave New World. It flies in the face of what the word kindergarten means, which is kids in the garden. Why have we lost sight of that important message? And also, one of our best cartoonists in Australia is Lunig, and he really believes, what's going on in the screen is really going on outside your window, so just get out there. And we always get a chuckle from Lunig. Wow. Phil, we talked about this before I started. In Australia, most teachers just think they're an assessor, an evaluator, and a data collector. And that's the way these, testing and whatever else has gone to. And it's the McDonaldization, just like Ritza has said, of what our culture is all about. But when you fight it, because what happened in 2011, Pete Martin, who many of you may know, and we sat and we fought the Australian curriculum because we saw that outdoor learning didn't feature, was not even mentioned. We did a word search in the curriculum for outdoor. 0 did it come up. And so Pete and I, plus a band of, pods of hope, came back and we fought ACARA. ACARA is the Australian Curriculum Assessment and Reporting Authority. And we decided this battle is worth fighting. Sometimes you give up battles, others you're worth fighting. So, as I just said, in Pods of Hope, here's ACARA. And it took us, I'll just go back, it took us from 2011 to 2017 to have this breakthrough. So our curriculum in Australia now looks like that cube. I'll talk more about it on Saturday if you want to come along. And infused within the curriculum is outdoor learning. So whether you're teaching English, maths, science, commerce, it all has an outdoor learning component. And that's the fourth, maybe I can use this. That one there, that is our outdoor learning. CC is Curriculum Connection landing page. If you want to find our resources, they're all freely available. Just Google resources, Australian curriculum, and it'll take you straight to outdoor learning. So I'm about to finish up. I hope I've quickly given you a summation of how we in Australia are building a bigger boat. I even haven't gone to the adventure therapy and acceptance commitment therapy that we're doing. My message to all of you is keep building your pods of hope, surrounding yourself with like-minded people. And the last two provocations, what's the one thing you can do to ensure gender equality at this conference? For example, if we're in a workshop and you look at the reference list, do a head count, male versus female. How many men are exalted as theorists, etc., etc. So, start naming it and don't be afraid to. And lastly, how are you going to expand the global impact of your work?